Okay, for this next thing, we're going to create a math quiz. And what I wanted to do is I'm going to have the user put in data, the answers, basically. When they click this button, it's going to tell them what's right and what's wrong. And it's going to display a button that will then send them over to another page. That's the design I'm going to go with. I can design it in different ways. So like I could design it to where the button doesn't appear until they get all of these questions right. But for this one, it's just going to be like practice. So kind of like homework where you show them what they got right and wrong, they check answers, and then I'm just going to send them somewhere else. So first up, let's take a look at the HTML. And I mean, it's H1P, and I just did some basic divs right here. I got the input box right here. And they're not there yet because we need to make something appear. So what I did is usually you use a paragraph tag, or we've been using a paragraph tag. I'm going to use a span tag, and you'll see the benefit of a span tag when we're done coding it. But basically, if you use a paragraph tag, what it's going to do is it's going to bounce all of this stuff around. It's going to create a paragraph, and then this input box is going to be bounced away from the other input box and stuff like that. So I just want a little simple message to appear right here without messing up how this stuff is displaying. So once you get that, you take a look, and I'm doing 4 math problems. So you have problem 1, problem 2, problem 3, problem 4, and then result 1, result 2, result 3, result 4. The results are going to be, just like you messed with getting a correct string. When the string is correct, they get like a little message or something like that. And then I have my button right here. Okay, I check answers, so it's going to run a function. And then this button is hidden right now. So the style display none. This button's hidden. It's there, but it's not there. And I'll show you what this is later. So basically, you could wrap this in an anchor and send them off to like another page, like right here. Or you can create a function. So there's 2 different ways you can do it. You can either wrap an anchor here, or you create a function down below, and that can send them somewhere else as well. Or you can send them to random pages. So that opens it up to randomizing what math problems they do and stuff like that. So let's say that students are on their Chromebook and they get a math problem. You give them an array of math problems, and it discourages cheating because the person next to them is not on one of the pages. Okay, so let's go ahead and start in on coding the script. Okay, so the button that's going to check the answers, that's the function we're going to run. So we want to do function check answers, give it the curly, and let's just bury this curly for now because it's going to be, we're going to have to put all of the other code inside of this function. So we have to get it to read what's in the box, and if you remember, that's a constant, and what did we name it? Well, we have to give it a unique name. So answer 1, because they're giving an answer, equals document dot get element by ID, and we ID'd the first one as problem 1, and you want the value out of that box. Okay, So we coded the first one, and if we code the first one, we've essentially coded all of them. Hard part's over, we just got to change names. So I'm just going to copy and paste this 4 times and then change the names. So one of the ways I'm going to code this is I'm going to create an array. So I'm going to call this const and correct answers. And then build the array. So now we got to build the array. So you do a rigid bracket, single quote. First math problem is 4. And second math problem is 7. Oops, I got to do a comma is 7, comma, 30, comma, and again it's 4. And rigid bracket. Oops, that's curly. There's a rigid bracket. So I do have to build another array. So what I'm basically going to do is I have to match the answers, and I have to tell the code to look in a special place. So, if the user puts in 4 and then 7, 30, and then 4, I've already told the code to look at what the input is, and it's going to look to make sure that these integers match. And I have to tell it to basically evaluate whether or not this is correct, okay, whether or not these statements are true, and then print the result right here, either correct or incorrect. So I do have to build another array. So I'm going to call this const result equals, and since it is an array again, oops, have to do a hard bracket. And this part is a little redundant, but I have to have it look. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the inputs, it's going to make sure it matches these inputs, and then it's going to print the statement right where I specified here. So, this is result 4, I have result 3, result 2, result 1. So I'm just calling this result. So it has to look there, so I have to do a document get element by ID, and the ID is going to be, I'm going to do result 1. Oops. Like that. And if I've coded result 1, then result 2, 3, and 4 are going to be coded the same way. So I'll just copy paste that and change the names. Now I did make a mistake. You don't need semicolons, you need commas because it is an array. So putting statements like this it's the same sort of arrangement. This is reading a string, and it's going to convert it to an integer. That's why you have the quotes around it. This right here is it's just going to read and say, hey, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. I want you to print the result. So you arrange it with the commas just like this, but that's all you're doing is doing the get element by ID. And then you do a rigid bracket and semicolon to close it off, just like a normal array. Now here's where we get to the part with some greater complexity. Now, what you want it to do is you want it to look in this right here. You want it to examine the array to make sure that the inputs match what's in the array. And then you want it to print based upon what's in the array, or whether it's correct or incorrect, whether it evaluates to true or false. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste the code in, and then we're going to take a look at what it's doing. So the first thing is, let's do the squiggly brackets, because for is like a let, an else if. And we haven't talked about it yet, but there's also a while, but we'll get to that later. So for is basically, think of it like for what is put into these boxes, okay, for this arrangement of code, and you got to specify the code. It has to look at the array. So let I, okay, equals 0, so it tells you the placement within the array, okay, because remember you have to set it to 0. So I, and then you do the less than symbols, and you want it to traverse the length. So I want you to start here. I want you to look at everything in there, and that is the correct answer's length. And I want you to look at them one at a time, and that is the incrementing. Okay, so you're telling it 3 different things. Look here, look at the entirety of it, and look at them one by one. And that's what it's going to do when it takes a look at what's in this box. It takes a look at the array, and then it looks at each of these results one by one. So I'm going to copy and paste this next part. And let me shrink this window. There we go. So we got a lot of different things going on in here. And let me add the curly brackets, because this is also its own if statement. So it's like a for statement saying, look at this stuff. Then if it meets all of this criteria, which is it true or false? So you have to bury it within this for statement right here. So let's go ahead and just kind of like give ourselves some room to write here. And we're going to need to do something within this if statement. Okay, so if correct answers, okay, this or I, okay, which you defined up here, or you're having it look at the array, so at I, equals what's called parse integer. And we did this before. Parse integer is basically, so an integer is, you got to think of it, it's kind of a weird concept to think about math, and I'll just write it out. This right here is the number 1. It is both a symbol and can be considered an integer. So 1 can be like just that line on a piece of paper. If you write the number 1, you know it as the number 1. But you also know it as an integer, meaning these are each symbols that indicate I have 6 apples. Okay, I have 5 apples. I have 4 apples. But the integer up, the meaning behind this number is that when you have 1 and then you move to 2, you have 2 more of something. If you move to 3, you have 1 more of something for a total of 3, and so on and so on and so on. It's integered. It's integered up. So, you know, if you think of, you have this symbol for 1. If I say, I want you to picture an apple, and you have 1, your brain may not do this, but it may think of O-N-E as the number 1. So we have 2 different ways to basically, you know, like in Spanish, 1 is uno, right? That's just an arrangement of letters that communicates that there is 1. So if you know Spanish, you actually know the number 1 in 3 different languages. You know it in, this is an Arabic numeral, okay? This is O-N-E, and this is U-N-O. So you know how to communicate the number 1 3 different ways. But what is math for? It's to show integered. So if I say, oh, how old are you? And you're like, I'm 15. 15 tells me that you were 14 and that you will be 16. And I know this, I'm 15, and there's a lot of meaning behind it, meaning you have lived on this earth for 15 years. That is integer, like time scale is an integer. We got to leave in an hour. You think an hour is the number 1 or 60 minutes or whatever. That's the symbol we picture, but we know we have to wait a period of time that is integered. So, and we've kind of already gone over this, computers look at integers and strings differently, whereas O and E, or actually this, can be both an integer and a string, just like right here. It's using this as an integer, but it can also be a string, like up here, where it's checking against the symbol itself. And it gets a little confusing, but you have to specify to the code that you're wanting it to look at it as an integer, okay? So there's a few different things happening here. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. You want an if statement to evaluate if something is true or false. You associate it to your array, which is correct answers. And up here you set I to 0 to make it look at the first position. Remember 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The first position isn't 1. It's always 0. And you want it to look at the length, and you want it to integer up or increment up. So you have it correct answers, I equals. Now, parse integer means if they accidentally put a space, like a bunch of spaces, and then the number 4, it's going to ignore all of those spaces as an input and just look for the integer. So there are some errors that they can make. We can double check it later, but if they go, it's 4.0, it may evaluate it to be true, but I don't see any sort of user taking a simple addition and going 4.0. And what else do you want it to do? You want it to evaluate, that's the eval. And you want it to evaluate the answer and have it look along the array. And that's that I, which is in the 0 position, plus 1. Bounce along the array and take a look. So in here are all your associations. This is where things should be, and this is where it should look. This is what you want it to do. Okay, now obviously if you're saying if this happens, what do you want it to do? You got to define what it needs to do. So here's results. Okay, so it's associating back to that constant. And I, so it's looking along the array. Text content is just, it's basically you want it to display text. And what text do you want it to display? You want it to display correct with an exclamation point. Now, we're going to add just one more thing you can do. It's kind of like a cool bell and whistle. You can also control the style of the statement that you make. So if you want to display correct exclamation, it'll just be in plain old black and white. I just copy and pasted it in, but you can change the text color to green by saying the result style color. You're changing the color to green. I mean, you can change it to a hex or whatever you want. And then I just put in the else statement, and it's basically the same thing, but if they get it wrong, then you put wrong. Maybe we can make this nicer and put incorrect without the exclamation. It's too threatening. And then we're just going to change the color to red. So let's go ahead and check to see if this works. Okay, so it's not going to work just yet because of how I arranged the function. I still have to hook up the button and all of that stuff too. So let's go ahead and get to doing that. So this is just like the the other assignment you did where they check a statement, you check a box, you click a box or click a button, and then a button appears. You have it hidden, but then you tell it when this is checked and everything's as you say it should be, it's going to display. So display block. So I just copy and pasted that in. Now let me show you the other way of advancing to the next page. So remember we hooked up the button that appears. So the style display none. Okay, that button's going to appear after all conditions are met. It says on click, go to next page. Now, I kind of like a side note. I know we did what are called event listeners, but because this is pretty simplistic code, an on click will do. You're just basically clicking two different buttons, and there's only a couple of events that are taking place. But I mean, if you have a web page where stuff's appearing out of nowhere and they're entering data over here and it may be incorrect, you want event listeners. So this is just the incorrect / simple way to do it. Anyway, back to how to advance a page. If you create a function that says go to next page, that's just the name of the function. So I named it go to next page, go to next page. And if you put these on, if you put this code on different web pages, you don't have to go renaming everything. So even though this may change, so I matched 1.html to here. You know, you can change that to 2, but make sure just the page exists over here. Window location, you tell it it's an href, and you're good to go. So let's go ahead and check to see that everything works. So we have 4, and I'm going to put some wrong answers. And let's see, 4, 1. Can't get this to work. Why can't I get it to work? I knew it. I have a little curly bracket right there. When I copy and pasted it over, I knew I forgot something. That little curly bracket. Hate those guys. Maybe when you guys can grow up and figure out a way to not need all these curly brackets. So let's try it again. So 4, 1, 1, 4. Correct, incorrect, incorrect, correct. Next page, click. And I just need to hook it up. So I can show you how to hook that up later. I want to kind of keep this video short. But again, if that's not working for you, another thing you do is just wrap this in an anchor, a href equals quote 1.html, and then, you know, just put that at the end like that. Oops, don't need a Q in there. Anyways, there you are.